Hi, Namaskar. Good evening and welcome to our webinar titled Forging Ahead Business Travel Version 2. Thank you for joining us today. Today we have an elite panel that's going to kind of give us insights and throw some light on how the situation is evolving around us, how we are kind of trying to beat the pandemic and restart and kickstart our lives in terms of business travel. So what is important for us to understand is that the timing of this event has been is going to coincide with the opening of some parts of the business travel, uh, airports, aviation. Some parts of it is going to reopen, and we are going to soon be in a position where we have to take decisions. So it's very relevant in terms of timing. And without much ado, let me just introduce the panel to you. The panel, the first to go would be Ashish Kishore, who is the Managing Director for GBT India. Ashish is currently serving as the Managing Director India at American Express Global Business Travel since December 2017. Ashish is a Harvard Business School executive and has done his MBA from Lucknow University and postgraduate diploma in computer applications from NIT. During his 22 years plus long career, Ashish has worked with leading travel organizations such as HRG Donata, Yatra, Kony, SOTC, Make My Trip, and Cox and Kings. Ashish has a deep understanding of dynamics of the travel marketplace and is an industry thought leader. He is a board member of GBTA and has been instrumental in working towards structuring the Indian travel industry. Ashish has proven his competence in establishing, consolidating operations and implementing measures to achieve sustainable and profitable business. Ashish has a collaborative and inspiring leadership style, which results in building highly effective and diverse teams to compete in tough and uncertain market conditions. Welcome, Ashish. A very good evening to you.
Thank you,
The,
Suraj.
the, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, the second panelist I wanted to introduce was Ashwin Norona. Ashwin is the Director Aerospace at KPMG India. A student of aviation for over 20 years, Ashwin brings diverse experience in ranging from policy formulation, strategy operations, P&L management for airlines and airports, spread across EMEA, India and Southeast Asia. Ashwin leads KPMG's global consulting hub. Welcome, Ashwin. A very good evening to you.
Thanks, Suraj. Thank you. You're sounding like the Larry Page of the aviation sector. Huh?
Thank you. So the next panelist that I have to kind of present to you is Megha Chopra. Megha Chopra is the country business head, Global Commercial Services, American Express India. Megha leads American Express Commercial Services business that provides payment solutions to corporations throughout India. With a diverse experience across corporate and commercial banking segments, Megha comes with a deep understanding of financial services, digital solutions, and evolving business landscape, which is shaping customer demand. Welcome, Megha. A very good evening to you. Pooja Khakkar, who's our next panelist, is a procurement professional for travel, handling Asia Pacific at. Thanks, Megha. Handling Asia Pacific at IBM. Responsible for driving travel sourcing strategies for the AP region, Pooja has diverse experience in travel operations, supplier management, stakeholder relationships, and client management. Travel technology, people development, and consulting are other areas that she's worked upon. Welcome, Pooja.
Thank you, Suraj.
Welcome. My next panelist is Rajdev Bhattacharya, Global Head and for Travel and Hospitality at Wipro. He's also heading the Way to Go product for Wipro. So Rajdev is an aviation and travel enthusiast, has multiple areas of responsibility, including implementing a well-crafted global travel program through effective use of technology, right partners in the ecosystem, and best-in-class supplier deals for enhanced user experience and cost control, savings, and compliance. In addition, he is the business head for Wipro's world-class T&E platform, which already has been identified as futuristic travel and expense solution, powered by cutting-edge technology. This enterprise system has automated travel management, policy compliance, operational fulfillment, self-booking tools, and expense management. Welcome, Rajdev. Salil, who's the next panelist in our webinar today, is the regional sales head for North and East India at Etihad. Salil is an aviation leader with over 13 years of experience in domestic and international airlines. Salil has worked across regions in India, operating from both the South and North and East, and has spread time across these geographies equally. Is also has extensive experience in working with OTAs and travel management companies. Salil, your rich experience will help us navigate through these times and today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Suraj.
And Sandeep Shastri, who's the Regional Director for South Asia Sabre Travel Network, joins us this evening. In his role, Sandeep is responsible for sales performance across South Asia and the retention and organic growth of both local and global accounts. He has also worked closely with Sabre's product technology team to drive customer-centric solutions deployment in South Asia. Prior to Sabre, Sandeep has served management and business development roles across banking, TMCs, online travel, aviation, and travel technology sectors. Welcome, Sandeep. A very good evening to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. And finally, Verghese, who's responsible for the Australia Asia Pacific regional category lead at Accenture. Verghese is responsible for procurement and is a travel management professional with over 20 years of experience in the travel industry, spanning procurement, sales, product management, and general management. He has driven meaningful transformation and built high performance businesses. Today, as a general manager, he uses his appetite for change to support businesses facing into major periods of transformation, cost effective and focused on process excellence. Welcome, Verghese. A very good evening to you.
Thank you, Suraj.
So we finally have all our panelists on board. We're going to kickstart the discussion today, and let me begin by starting the context of this whole conversation. I'm going to allow Ashwin to talk about how the border controls, immigration, government frameworks, and regulations are going to impact travel. How travel will open up in a phased manner. We are going to examine some areas where travel uh, will be taking off in terms of domestic travel to begin with, after that international travel. So without much ado, Ashwin, I want you to start laying out the structure for this panel, which we can use to kind of take things forward. Thank you.
Sure, Suraj. Thanks. Thank you, Suraj. And first of all, congratulations again to the entire TravelSpends family. It's an awesome setup that you've put up here with with this August audience that we have on air today. So absolute pleasure to be here. Right. So all of us understand that that policy usually drives strategy, and then strategy drives everything further down there. So it's absolutely important to understand where the government stands in this. Now, it's a black swan moment for the world. I don't think any government, business, or even the general public were anywhere close to prepared to where we are today, with almost everything coming to an absolute grinding halt. Right. So it's, how do I put this? I should say it's rather sucked out the bone marrow from everybody, leaving nothing behind. So hence I've codenamed COVID back to something which I call as Count Dracula back here looking for the love of his life. So it's probably going to be way tougher than 2008, which would probably just look like a small hiccup as compared to where we are today. No, but that said, I'm not going to touch GDP and the macro indicators to begin with. But that said, if you look at the way the federal government is approaching it at this point of time, they're not looking at it as a setback, because we were anyway on the downturn. If you look at some of the indicators earlier, they're probably looking at it as more of a blessing in disguise, and they're sort of looking at saying, can we hit the reset button and look at making things better going forward from here. And it's so evident from what the Prime Minister said the other day, right? The vision was so clear to say, let's look forward than looking behind. Two things that I want to bring up. One was the package, of course, that came out yesterday, 20 lakh crores in terms of assimilation. And this is not, don't look at it as a crisis relief. It's more of a simulation to the entire industry. That was one. Combine that with what we call as the NIP, for most of you would have heard of it, the National Infrastructure Pipeline, which is of another 100 over lakh crores. Combine the two, I think where the government's putting us is on a growth trajectory going forward. But what you would need along with that is a set of bold reforms, right? And I put them as the 4 L's of what the government should be looking at: labor, land, liquidity, and law. Put this together, make some fearless decisions out over there, and stop playing that snake and ladder game that we normally do, where you go one step forward and then you're moving 2 steps back. So if you're going to start pushing, looking at from that front of it, it's really going to change the way this industry is going to function, and that's what I look at it as a new normal. So parking what the federal's doing aside, if we come back to our industry, it's it's sitting at a grinding halt at this point of time. And if I start with just the airlines, 45 to 52% fixed cost, I don't think most of these airlines would even know what they should be doing at, unless the guys who have got their their P&Ls absolutely right with sitting with cash. So if you're going to ask me, what is the government doing about it? I really don't think they have a clue. So
Okay, sure.
it's a tough moment for Mocha because they've not seen something like this before. As in, when was the last time you heard where cash forward bookings have dropped by 70%? We've got an entire team of people from the travel trade over here. A 70% drop in forward bookings, I think, is unprecedented. Even 2001 didn't have that happening. So if you're going to say Mocha or DGCA at this point of time, I think they really have no clue on how to wake this patient up who's sitting in an induced coma. So it's a tough ask for most of these folks. Borders, we really don't know when they're going to open. There's something that we don't have control over. But so instead of, I remember when we spoke last time around, was it Pooja saying that, she would walk off this conference if it's going to be a negative connotation. So I'm trying to keep it on the positive side of it. What should the government be looking at? We saw from the simulation package that first was the vulnerable part of society that they're putting their money in. If those who followed what the FM said today, she's looking at the second package is predominantly going towards more the migrant and that kind of society. So are we as an industry going to get a bailout package? I think that's my guess versus anybody else's guess at this point of time. So we'll probably have to wait that part out.
Sure.
Now, why am I saying that I'm not very comfortable or saying that are we going to get a package from the government today? Is I'll take your attention to two ratios which the Prime Minister's office or the Finance Ministry would be looking at. Capital to labor, one clear indication. Second would be capital to taxes. So if the government puts in $1 over here, what is that they're going to get returned in these two elements of it? So for them, it's a complex equation to solve when you take the country as a whole and the economy as a whole. So where do we as the aviation sector stand? Okay, what is our contribution, if I have to look at saying, to the GDP? For us to go back to the government and say, please make some investment over here and bail us out. The last, I remember checking the maths, 1x?
Sure.
2% in terms of overall contribution to the current GDP. So I just pulled out some numbers, which I was looking at and saying, if I have to look at your tax throughput to the correlation, a correlation coefficient, we're around 0.81. If I look at ATMs, it's around, domestics is around 0.61 and international is around 0.7. And it's not a very happy picture if I have to go back to the government and say, give me money and, I have to bail out the sector. Let's say, why not put the money into construction? But
sure,
if you're going to switch that on its head and say, we come together as an industry, not as a sector, but the key word here is an industry, where I bring the hotels, I bring the travel, the tourism part of it, the dining and entertainment. We then look at a contribution of around close to 10x.
Sure.
Okay. So,
Ashwin, so yeah,
just take a
I
minute
think
before you come in now.
Yeah.
Yep. So just take a minute before I.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So going forward, I think what we need to look at is to break that silo. The artificial silo that we've created between the travel trade, the airlines, the airports, the hotels, the airlines, the airports. So it's time to break that, okay, and come together and start collaborating your resources. Start collaborating again. I'm sure your technology folks will pick this up. Start collaborating on technologies by itself. So not technologies in isolation. We're talking a lot about saying use of technology to overcome this challenge, but it's collaborations of technology, right? Put that together and stop making the solution bigger than the problem.
Fair.
That's going to be your first step. The second step is to say, how does this industry now eliminate fear and instill confidence? So I would think we should start the thought process beginning from there.
Sure.
Suraj?
Yeah. Thanks, Ashwin. I really appreciate the perspective you have given to that. So, the current pandemic has had a profound impact on the way we live our lives, on the way business travel happens. There is absolutely negative sentiment, no business confidence in terms of traveling. Developments have created a complete uncertain future, right? Within aviation, hospitality, which has contributed significantly to global GDP, jobs, economies around the world. But today, the entire industry is going through a tough time. And that's why we believe that forging ahead and how business travel resurgence will happen is a key aspect. Now, here, let me bring in Ramesh. Ramesh is the Vice President Global Sales at Marriott International. He's also a key member of their team in terms of how their strategies are implemented. He has the insights of what's getting discussed within the hospitality space. He has held roles in different geographies, which give him the experience to bring together the strategic responses that hotels would be expected to give. Because and Ramesh, what I would like you to examine is in the context of the fact that today the shared economy, there are lots of question marks around it, because Airbnb, for example, the standardization, a brand like yours, which plays multiple segments or within the hospitality industry, okay, is well suited to take advantage of the way forward. And you are also based out of Hong Kong, which is a key market as far as Marriott is concerned. It is very close to China, which was the epicenter. Your learnings will be valuable for this group, and I request you to come and share some insights with us, Ramesh.
Great. Thank you, Suraj. Thanks for having me on the panel, and thanks for everyone who's dialed in to listen. Um, Needless to say, these are unprecedented times, and it's a term that's overly used, but it does very little to quantify the magnitude of this issue that we're dealing with. What we're seeing, at least in our industry right now across the world, it's come to a complete halt. And not only that, a lot of our hotels have been forced to shut down. So at least I can talk on the Marriott front. Out of our 7,400 hotels, we have 2,000 that are shut now and are close to various stages of opening. And that's the magnitude that we're dealing with that no business can ever prepare for. In saying this, what we're seeing that's coming out through our research, our customer sentiment, things that we're preparing for, is safety and hygiene. It's the non-negotiable ask that is coming to us from travelers, guests, the partners that we work with, and it's something that's going to be looked as the new amenity, whether you're booking hotels, airlines, or cars. This is going to be something that's going to be at the forefront of every ask from a traveler. So we're taking this very seriously at Marriott International. I know the travel industry overall is taking this seriously too. And when we did a survey of what people were, the top asks from people in terms of building confidence to travel again, 58% of them globally said that the feeling of safety was their top ask. So keeping this in mind, at least Marriott, along with a lot of other institutions around the world, are focused on safety and cleanliness. We ourselves have set up a global cleanliness council that's providing our hotels around the globe the latest guidance on hygiene and cleanliness protocols on all aspects of the guest experience, whether it's room, food and beverage, and public areas. So given we've been in the business for 92 years, it comes with some experience and credibility. And that's what we're focused on delivering, right? Making sure that our associates are protected and our guests who do stay with us are protected. As it relates to the shared economy that you talked about, yes, it is going to be a challenge to build confidence, from what I believe, because of consistency and the execution of these protocols and standards. I see that being a challenge going forward as it comes to demand. To your question on China, we have close to 350 hotels in China. At the peak of this pandemic, we had close to 90 hotels closed. We have most of them open today. I think we have barely one or two that are still closed. But from its peak to now, foreseeing or looking at forecasts for May and June, we will touch close to 40% occupancy across China in June. So if the peak was January, we're heading into May and June. That's the timeline of what we can map out as recovery. And what we've seen in China is a great example of governments and institutions working together to build confidence within its communities, to work closely together to put protocols in place and safety measures in place, which have been overly communicated, which is a good thing, so that everyone is clear on the art. So I think there's some great learnings from China on what we can be doing in each of our different countries, India specifically, as to how we need to plan ahead to make sure we have the infrastructure in place, we have the resources in place, to make sure that people are clear on what it's going to take to get to this slow path of recovery, and what it's going to take to make sure that people continue to stay safe and feel confident in traveling again. But that would be my initial take on what we're seeing, not just in the region in Hong Kong or China, but also across the globe, where we're seeing certain markets in Europe relax rules as well. So we're seeing this across the board in different shapes and forms, but it's a combined effort from the industry and the government. So over to you, Suraj.
Sure, sure. Ramesh, I have a follow-up question before I go to Salil, and my follow-up question is largely around the fact that how do you see hotel pricing going from here? Because there's talk about fumigating rooms, allocating 50% capacity in hotels, and that pushes up the cost. So if the cost goes up, then the corporates switch to a 4-star vis-a-vis a 5-star. There is a segment change in terms of what the traveler is entitled. So how do you see that playing out? Or do you see that's not a big issue? I feel it's a big issue personally.
Yeah, I think right now, from what we're focused on, is making sure that at the hotel level we have an environment where our associates and our guests feel safe, and you can't put a price on that, no matter what. So in this case, yes, the hotel does come with a lot of fixed costs which we do need to maintain, but in order to make sure that our guests feel safe, I don't see pricing going down in that sense. I think, if anything, we will do our best to keep that stable. But again, from what we're hearing from our customers, that is the first ask. And if that is the first ask, and if that is the priority to make sure that businesses continue to manage their travel, they continue to forge ahead in building their business, this is a given in order to support that. So I look at it as an enabler, that we have a safe environment where people can come and meet and have discussions and talk business and sign deals, versus being focused on price, because I think that's going to be secondary going forward. Now again, I may be challenged on that, but I think that's going to be the focus for everyone going forward.
Sure. Thank you, Ramesh. So Salil, can I just bring you in at this point to get the supplier view on the other side of it, which is the airlines? And if you could, it would be good if you can classify both domestic and international aviation, and then we could kind of understand from a corporate perspective and a supplier perspective how they look at these things.
Right. Thanks, Suraj. I think, yeah, you very rightly said that, the recovery path for domestic and international carriers will be very different. Both will have its own challenges, but there are also some similarities. So I'll first talk about the similarities, and then I'll follow it up with the differences. And then I'll like to touch briefly upon the major areas of dependencies for the aviation sector to come out of this, with the probable solutions that I have in mind. So starting with the similarities, I think most airlines that I know of have brought forward their transformation plans, which were originally planned for the next 5 years. Things like NDC implementation, right sizing of the organization, and so on and so forth. They've been brought forward by at least 2 to 3 years. The other common feature, be it domestic or international, is that the ancillary revenue related to onboard F&B sales is likely to dry out, and for some of the airlines that was a major source of revenue. People might not be comfortable buying food on board anymore. But that being said, that might get compensated to a certain extent by the increased uptake for seating and baggage related ancillaries. So there will be some trade-off in that aspect. The other feature which will be common is that we will see more and more unbundling of services, and this will be demanded by the passengers, because everyone will want to choose their travel plan or itinerary in a very different way rather than pre-packaged products. These are the similarities, but there will be stark differences as well. For example, there is discussion of no food being served on domestic airlines. That is a non-starter on international. On an ultra long haul flight, you cannot go without serving food. Pre-packaged meals will be a common feature going forward, but there is a risk associated, because then you're forcing passengers to take off their masks. So that needs to be reviewed very carefully.
There is also the angle of the compliance with regards to personal protective equipment. Now, you might mandate that everyone has to wear a mask on board, but on an ultra long haul 14-hour flight, will people comply 100% and keep wearing a mask or a face shield? Remains to be seen. So these are some of the similarities and differences, the way international and domestic airlines will come out of this. But there are some common dependencies as well, and that's what I want to touch upon the top 3 dependencies that are there, which will drive the way we come out of this. First one being, once the borders do open, there will be a complex patchwork of regulations that we'll have to navigate through, and there will be a scenario where the traveler does not know who is in control, whether it is his government, his country, or the transit hub that he's passing, or his end destination. And uh, till this lack of clarity is there, there will be a dissuasion to the traveler to initiate or come back. There will be a globally coordinated strategy required to beat this challenge, and global bodies like IATA, ICAO, and the other security bodies will play a key role in this recovery. There are some interesting concepts coming up, like the travel bubble concept between Australia and New Zealand, where the passengers who are not affected are allowed to travel, and these two countries largely have lower rates of but these are too early. I believe there's still a proof of concept team, and it's still very early in the day. The other important point I want to touch upon, because everyone is talking of the China model, and in aviation, I don't think the China model applies to us, because if you look carefully, Shanghai and Beijing were largely unaffected, in China, and that is where the bulk of their travel spend lies. Whereas in India, Bombay and Delhi are majorly impacted. So I don't think we benchmark the China model in India. It'll be myopic to look at it that way. I think we need to look at it in a wider aspect. The second dependency, Suraj, is the financial impact of COVID, right? And there's a dichotomy here, which I'd like to highlight, is that on the consumer angle, the purchasing power of the individual and the cost pressures on the corporate customer will be very high. But from the airline side, like Ashwin mentioned, the fixed costs and the variable costs going up. A recent estimate by CAPA indicates that on domestic aviation in India, at least a 40 to 100% increase in average break-even fare will be required just to mitigate these increased variable and fixed costs. Now, what are these variable costs that will go up? One is social distancing norms. If they are put into place, then the airline seat factor will be capped. I personally think this will not happen. IATA has rejected this concept of leaving seats empty on board, and so have the airline chiefs in India. So I don't think this is going to happen. And
but Salil, on
also,
the other hand, Delta has gone ahead and announced that they will leave the middle seat empty, right, in the US. And
right,
that's one thing to I'm kind of just interjecting your thoughts there. Second part is that you are looking at social distancing in airports, boarding, everything else. But once inside the aircraft, you don't have that 1.5 meter apart, right? So by me saying that I will enter the gates of heaven, but once I enter heaven, I will see hell, right? So that's the analogy I'd like to draw there,
right.
right?
You're right, and Suraj, purely the authorities have that in India. The authorities have purely rejected because it still doesn't mean still doesn't meet the social distancing guidelines laid out by WHO or any respected authority. So it doesn't
Sure.
achieve much. They can do it to please passengers in the short run, but it's not achieving the objective.
Fair,
Okay.
fair. Yeah.
So the next variable cost which airlines will see going up is the increased turnaround time due to sanitization requirements on board. So just like to throw some numbers here, the average utilization of an aircraft in India is 11 trips in domestic, and that is expected to fall down to 8 trips a day. Okay. Also, the surplus aircraft in India is expected to reach 300 in our country alone. And what this will do is this will force the airlines to allocate the average fixed cost of the grounded fleet onto the operational fleet. This will further push up the average break-even fare. So, for example, if the average break-even fare on Bombay Delhi used to be 5,000 pre-COVID, it will go up to 9.7K going forward. So there is a dichotomy. The customer can't afford to pay as much anymore, but the airline needs to charge more to survive. So it'll be really interesting to see how the demand and supply drive this balance.
Sure.
The last point, Suraj, the last dependency that I want to touch upon, and most important one I believe of all the ones, is the customer confidence. People will come back to travel only if they feel safe. Otherwise, you can't do much to make them travel. And
Sure.
three top solutions to this, I feel. First is the measures taken by the airport operators and the airlines by adopting technology and tools. And there's some interesting ones coming forth as we progress, such as voice-based check-ins. I think thermal checks will become a norm across all the airports. Full body disinfection machines have been put at some of the major airports across the world. UV disinfection tunnels for baggage and trolley is being put. So a lot of tools and technologies are being leveraged by airlines and airport operators. Also, another interesting thing that Indian airports will have to expedite and play catch up is to accept mobile boarding passes, because as much as we want to go touchless, we can't go completely touchless, but this is a quick win, a low hanging fruit where you can eliminate the need for printed boarding passes. The
Sure.
second thing that will increase customer confidence is the refund policy of the airline, and this is a double-edged sword, because as much as the passenger would want refund, this is the only cash flow left with most of the airlines right now.
So we will visit that, Salil, in a while, because I have a point there which I want you to come back, and once we just do the we get a brief understanding of what others are thinking, we will come back to that. So
Sure.
let me just throw up a poll now for the audience. We are basically asking the question to the audience whether the traveler's choice of an airline or hotel will be influenced by price, loyalty programs, visibility, to safety or hygiene practices, or the travel policy. So can we just have the polls go live with aviation and hospitality? So I request the audience to vote on this, and it will be interesting to see what the audience believe is going to be the influencing factor or the traveler's choice on airline and hotels. And I'm sure Salil and Ramesh are listening into this. Yes, I think we are good to. I hope everybody has voted, and we are good to kind of look at the results. So we could end the poll and bring the speakers back. Yeah. So so there you go. The results are that 78% of the audience believes that visibility to safety and hygiene practices are going to be critical going forward. So thank you. I think travel policy comes in second. Price is around the same place. Loyalty programs, unfortunately, don't have any takers. So I really don't know how many people of the audience are frequent flyers, because you have not actually voted for loyalty programs. But yeah, what you voted for is true. Visibility and safety is going to be the most critical factors. So Verghese, I'd like to bring you in at this point and ask you a question from a corporate standpoint. uh, Travelers believe that they want to be safe. Hygiene standards have to be there. That we've heard Ramesh, we've heard Salil. Costs are going to go up because the principal providers are not in a mood to kind of take any more losses or go the way Kingfisher and Jet went. So what is in it? What is in it for a corporate, and how will the corporate overcome the situation?
Suraj, if you ask me, I agree to a lot of what the other panelists said around the pricing, around the environment and things like that is going to be changing. Said that, I feel the policy will play a major role within an corporation, and the policy will have input from external and internal forces. Now, a lot of external forces will actually define what is an essential travel, or I will say permissible travel. So there are two things that we are really looking at: what is essential and what is permissible. So essential will require to be controlled by a lot to do by the traveler and the immediate manager or the team leads kind of thing. But then permissible travel will have inputs coming in from the policymakers, the management, and the external forces, travel managers. Now, a lot of what I see is from what we used to see, that compliance to the policy will have to change. We'll have to see that there will have to be a great adoption of the policy. You can't have a lot of deviation happening. And when we come to the pricing, so I somehow feel duty of care will be the need of the hour. And I see the future volume might not be the key. It will be the market share and the fair value. So it might not be the price, it might be a fair value. Now, how you define fair value is by including the confidence, by showing what is the value that a property or an airline or a ground transport provider is providing for the organization and for the individual traveler to adopt it. So, so from whatever I know, I mean, we don't really have a lot of historical data with us to be able to actually predict how things gonna be. But what I see is duty of care would be the need of the hour, and that's how it will be going forward.
Sure, Burgess. So I have a follow-up question there before I go to Ashish and then to Sandeep and Megha. So the follow-up question is around the fact that, with volumes coming down, your ability to do a managed program effectively with suppliers comes down, right? So there is no real managed program because consolidation of volumes gives you the ability to create programs, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you see that situation playing out? Do you believe airline discounting will come down, corporate deals may not be as attractive, or do you see the next whole year you will have refundable fares to instill confidence? Airlines will kind of roll out the SOPs, hotels will roll out the SOPs for building this demand. How do you see this shaping up? Because we heard Ramesh say
So
that they're not going to be necessarily trying to break even in the next year in some of the
yeah,
initiatives that they will take.
yeah. So I continue to see the managed program gonna be existing right now. As I mentioned earlier, duty of care is gonna be the center of everything. Now, if you're required to have the employee safety and the company needs to have the confidence in travel, you're required to have a managed program, right? Now, the
Sure.
managed programs definition might be different, like what I said earlier. It might not anymore be the volume. It might be more to do with market share. Like today, if I am talking to an airline or hotel, I'm discussing based on a volume that I'm committing to the airline, right? But tomorrow I might not be wanting to commit a number there, but I would be wanting to talk about, I can give you a market share of so much. Let me know what you want interested in. Similarly,
Sure.
again, I mentioned fair value, right? So that's the way we're gonna go forward with this. We might not have um, a lot of, I mean, you might have to end up restructuring the requirement. You might have to go back to the drawing board and see how your demand is increasing, what is your safety and health requirement, what is your lead time that you have. So all this gonna work, I mean, gonna be used for creating your managed program. Right now today, um, I might have a managed program. Say, let's take example of a ground transport, and I might be having a managed program wherein I have a particular fixed rate defined with a particular ground transport vendor. Uh, now, there's a huge drop in my volume, and I might not be able to use what I was talking about in the past. Now, if I move into a per trip model, it might not be viable for the vendor anymore to support me. Now we'll have to figure out a model in which it might be win-win for both the supplier as well as for the corporation. You
Sure.
cannot have completely one-sided programs, because going forward, it's a need for both the parties to be able to survive in the market.
Sure.
I can't be
Excellent.
having any more airlines shutting down, any more suppliers shutting down, because that's going to increase. I mean, it's going to create a monopoly in the market, and that's not really good for the market in long run.
Excellent. Thanks, Burgess. And let me bring Ashish in at that point. I think you have a customer who's telling you that they are open, they are willing to work with the ecosystem and come out of this together. So, Ashish, your views. So, a couple of points that I want to kind of ask you is: do you think travel pricing from a supplier standpoint needs to go up? The technology that is deployed can aid some of the fulfillment practices, and other views that you would like to share with the panel and with the audience.
Sure. Thank you, Suraj, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar, and thank you esteemed panelists. Great session so far. Good to hear some very, very interesting and solid views. So, if you'll ask me, the context is obviously very difficult. The situation is unprecedented. Not only travel, I don't think so anybody has seen this kind of pandemic before. Apart from that, I think it is also throwing a professional challenge to all of us, because I don't think so in any of our education we've been ever trained to manage this pandemic. Neither our life experiences have ever sort of trained us to do this. And that's why we are seeing all around the world, every individual sort of experimenting to sort of work through with this crisis. I think that's the agile thinking we need right now, rather than fixing frameworks for what's going to happen. I don't think so. I have, or anyone on this panel would have all the answers of what's going to happen. But we will have general framework how it would operate. And I would want to share those frameworks with everybody. The basic principle of that framework, as I believe, is travel is resilient. It will come back. It has come back before. In previous crises, it will come back again now. Because the power of presence and the experience of two human beings meeting with each other, trading, or just socializing is sort of what human spirit is all about. So travel is going to come back, no doubt about that. Now the next question, in what shape and form? That might just change. Because as of now, in the initial, when we'll open up, I think safety, security would be the most important criteria. And my esteemed panelists have spoken about tons of activity that the trade or as well as the service providers will take in place. That would also throw a spin-off in the way travel management policies have to be framed. That will also spin off in the way travel bookings are being made. And of course, technology will play a role. A lot of trainings have to be done from the TMC side. A lot of exercise has to happen from the user side as well. However, if you look at the overall matrix of a business, travel business as such, typically you would have a demand and supply forming two ends of travel, two ends of a business. I personally think as we move forward, the shape and form would be decided by the third element in this whole ball game. It will no longer be the policymaker defining a policy, expecting either demand to go up or making a policy for a supply to go up, and then demand will follow that supply. I think the empowerment of the user or the traveler will become the most important part in this entire business. It was, well, we all spoke about customer centricity in various forums. We spoke about creating, programs for our road warriors. We spoke about great customer service. We spoke about customer experience. But all those were one part of the overall strategy. They were never the policy. I think what will happen now as we move forward and as we evolve out of this crisis, slowly and steadily we'll come out of this hole. When we come out of this hole, the user will become the most important point. Because unless he feels safe in a travel policy, he's not going to buy a corporate travel policy. If he's not comfortable with the information provided by a TMC, he's not going to move forward with his travel plan, or at least feel very uncomfortable. Similarly, the choice of service provider. The whole life cycle or the journey of travel has to be curated for him. This curation will no longer be commoditized. India as a country is the sort of one of the interesting country where, while we are doing such high occupancy on hotels and such high flight load, we still remain highly commoditized. Nobody ends up getting, nobody makes money at the end of the day. Everybody is paid for that thin slice. This is a good time for the industry sort of count their coins and say, this is what I'm left with, and this is how I will operate in future. These are the values I'm delivering in terms of safety, security, quality of plane, meals, quality of hotel. the infrastructure, the customer service by a TMC, the safety, security, data, all that put together. And this is the price for it. Corporates at some point of time will have to sort of align that this is their cost of travel. And that they will front load into their cost of service to customer. Either they're selling a good or a service. That pass through has to happen now. And if it doesn't happen, we may come out in whatever form, but after a year and a half, we'll be again looking at another sort of, suppliers not being able to sort of stand their point. We've seen massive collapse in Indian market in terms of travel companies, in terms of airlines in the last couple of years. And that too, when our travel was just growing phenomenally, double digit. Who sees that in a business? That you have a double digit growth, your economy is the second fastest growing economy in the world, and you have service providers and airlines and hotels going bust. Doesn't happen. So on this point, we all need to be very careful of how we are planning. We have to be very nimble. I don't have all the answers, neither I think everybody has.
So Ashish, I have one follow-up question. Do you see that you will be able to command a premium in terms of the service that you provide, in terms of the client paying you that premium? So what I see is that going forward, because of the spread of the pandemic, the need from a travel company to pull up reports, give customer information in terms of where they are at what point in time is going to become higher and higher. And I think travel managers, travel administrators are going to play the role of being crisis managers, as I see. Right, so when they're playing the role of a crisis manager, the first part that gets impacted is your travel company, because their needs and demands go up. And today we have situations where travel companies have to optimize resources, invest in technology, and that's why I'm asking you this question.
Sure. So first of all, if I don't get paid, I think it will be very difficult for any entity to exist, because month of April or March, most of the organizations have seen all cost but no revenue. This is not a business model we've been taught anywhere, right? The business doesn't exist without sales. Now, if I need to get sales, I need to get some earning. And if at that point of time, if somebody's going to say that deliver me exceptional service, because as you rightly said, the roles have shifted. I am no longer as a TMC just a ticket issuance agency. I'm actually safeguarding the life of a traveler end to end. And I'm actually in some way participating in ensuring that the corporate fulfills its duty of care responsibility to traveler. Now there is a cost to it. And I leave that to my industry people can decide.
Point taken.
But if you go the commoditized way, Suraj, we've seen what has happened to the trade. This is a great opportunity to correct. If they don't, at least I won't walk that path.
Sure. I certainly believe consolidation is round the corner. Only the strong players will survive, and they will be able to command a good premium working with good clients. That's the way I look at things. Let me just throw up an audience poll on business traveler influence. So once travel commences, what is the single most important factor that will influence a business traveler's decision to travel? Right, because is it accuracy of information, building on the point that we spoke about? Is it organizational support, media and perception, because the media is constantly throwing news at you? There is conviction of a traveler, or whether it's friends and family who will influence it. So that's the second poll question that we're throwing up, and we would like you to vote, the audience, because we'd like to see what your thoughts are. I hope all of you have got enough time to kind of decide and vote. Thank you. Can we just publish the poll results, please? Okay, brilliant. So Pooja, I want to bring you in, and after that, I'd like to go to Sandeep and then bring Megha in. So fundamentally, I want to understand that the audience believes that organizational support is the most critical aspect. It is not media and perception. It is not self-conviction. It is the way an organization can stand with the traveler through his journey, because there are going to be a lot of imponderables as we see when they travel, right? So accuracy of information being the second most important factor as per the audience. So thank you. We can take the poll off and we can focus on Pooja and hear her views, what she has to talk about it.
Thanks, Suraj. So I completely agree, right? So if you talk about our organization, we've always had a great managed program. And even in the current scenario, right, we have started looking at things and look at what we can do, how we can do things differently so that our employees feel safe to travel. Uh, so the whole if your travel policy is employee centric, uh, it is going to the employees are going to feel safe to travel. So in my perspective, there will be changes, right, in how we do things, but there would be a huge change in the policy as our focus has always been on the duty of care. While I do understand that there will be companies with different controls and compliance policies, I still think we all need to agree to one point that going forward, we need to differentiate between the permissible travel and critical travel, because critical travel could really mean different things to different people. So in the current scenario, the way I look at it is that before our people start traveling, we will need to ensure that we meet the government guidelines, health passport requirements, quarantine regulations and requirements when they fly a particular airline or stay in a particular hotel. If they are transiting a high risk, a medium risk, or a low risk airport. Basically, to sum this up, I think duty of care is our primary focus, and it will be even more critical as this pandemic has clearly demonstrated the importance of knowing where our global travelers are at all times, and what is the kind of support they need to feel secure and safe. So I mean, I think, yeah, that would be my message, saying duty of care would really
Be the
mean
primary
will
thing.
be
Sure.
should be the primary focus, right?
Sure. So Verghese, do you want to add anything to what Pooja said before I hand over to Sandeep?
Yeah, I completely agree to her what she's saying. Now, if I take an example of a travel, right now, let's say an employee is planning to travel and has got a 15 days lead time to the travel. Now, between the time he makes the decision to travel to the time his management approves and the ticket is booked, there could be a 15 with a 15-day lead. There are going to be endless changes that's going to happen, and he's going to this information required to be communicated to the employee, and in a way that he understands why these changes are happening and what is good for him. So it's important that the organization supports and drives the policy and allows the employees to uh, have a safe travel.
Sure. So Sandeep, can I bring you in at this point? So one of the things that has happened around the industry is that the GDS has been at the flogging end of things in terms of, though they provide cutting edge technology, they allow for all the transactions to go through. It's a single source. You've been at the receiving end for the last couple of years, right? The value has been questioned, whether the existence is required or not has come into play. And now I think the industry is going back to pre-trip approvals. It is going back to the GDS, a single source, feeling safe, secure. So your thoughts on how technology is likely to change in the next couple of years, and the role that you will play to kind of integrate the ecosystem.
Thank you, Suraj. Really good question. And first of all, congratulations on setting up a really good panel. Some amazing people on the panel, and so much to learn. Also, thanks to the audience. I'm just looking at the right side of my screen. There are about 365 people on the webinar, which is quite impressive. And it's the audience poll gives us very good direction of what are top of mind thoughts. So before I start on the technology elements, let me just touch upon something that happened in January, Sabre had a leadership conference, and I was attending that in Dallas, and we had a futurist who came to talk to us as leaders, and he actually was talking about what Suraj was just mentioning, that the GDS world is transforming quite significantly, and he actually was preparing us. By the way, at that time, COVID was just a blip. I mean, it was not yet declared as a pandemic. It had just focused on Wuhan, and therefore that was not the context of why he was saying this. But he actually said that you have to prepare for a world that you don't even recognize. And as I look back, I mean, this was amazing insight that he was giving at that time without actually having a clue about COVID. And he talked
Prophetic
about three or four
words.
things which are, yeah, prophetic, and some of the things. And this guy's he's written a book called Future Work, guy called Seth Matheson. But he's talked about a few things that as leaders you need to be prepared for. And one is making sure that you have amazing networks. So as I look around the panel, we've got people from the hospitality side. I mean, Ramesh is there, and you've got people from the aviation side. Salil is there, and then you have corporate clients. You have people from the consulting background, and a TMC leader. So having the right networks is really important. The ability to learn in an agile way. I think Ashish used the word agile in his discussion as well in the context of leadership. I think learning agility, a growth mindset, which basically means that you have the humility to accept that you may not know all of the answers, but you're willing to learn in order to actually implement the right solutions. And the final piece, which I think is reflected in this webinar, is collaboration. Because I think a lot of innovation happens when you're under pressure, but it happens when you're collaborating and working across different organizations and businesses. So you asked a question around what are the technologies that we currently have and that we're looking at addressing from a future perspective. I think again I'll put it in the context of what the panelists have been talking about. When I look at some of the comments that Ashish made, which are around the margins that we have in corporate travel, I think it is pretty clear that we've got to focus on areas that we can control, and a large part of that is around automation and making sure that the whole workflow is in a standardized format, in a very very automated way. And there are some great products from an automation hub perspective in a small context in the current environment. Interestingly, in the last couple of months, all the three GDSs put together, when you look at the data, there have been more cancellations than bookings. And so most of us have a negative segments environment where we are actually paying back to airlines because there haven't been net bookings being made. This quite unprecedented. So in the immediate context, one of the things that is quite important is managing refunds, and there are some really good products like auto refunds, which is a web which is an application that we provide to our clients. I think Pooja and Varghese talked a lot about safety and security, and I think some of the poll questions brought that out. While they talked about organization support, I think a large part of that is around policy and safety. And I think there is a product, SafePoint, that we talk about. But I think what's going to happen going forward is it will require a collaborative effort from different applications. So one of the things that Sabre does is bring in, like very similar to an iOS environment. Sabre also brings in a lot of apps developed by independent app developers to take care of specific requirements in your workflow. And as an example, you have red apps like Route Happy or TripCase, which actually Route Happy gives you really good information on board the aircraft as to what is the seating style, what is the pitch, what are you going to have around you in that seating environment, so that in today's environment, when you are so concerned about how you're going to be sitting and what's physical distancing going to be like while you may have all of your masks, etc. there, but that gives you amazing insight and information. So bringing those apps in to additionally provide information for customers. And then finally, the piece which will be important is about integrating content and being able to provide options to cross sell. I think again Ashish touched upon thin margins in the business, and to my mind, I think GDSs like ourselves have to focus a lot more on non-air content. So we've got a effort through our lodging, ground and sea team to bring in a lot more content. We've created a solution. The first client has gone live in India just the first quarter of this month. Because of COVID, there hasn't been a lot of
Sure.
public announcements about it, but we've got something called content services for lodging, which integrates content, not just that Sabre has. Sabre has about 300,000 hotels. Most of the large global chains are present on Sabre, but we are also integrating content from big aggregators like Booking.com, Hotelbeds, Expedia into that, and offering it as a seamless sort of an environment, so that travel management companies can
Sure.
do shopping of not just air but also hotels, and we also now have in ground and sea, we also have cars and cruise content. Cruise, of course, now right
Sure,
now
Sandeep.
it's probably not the right thing to talk
The
about, but
most the hottest
it's
thing.
bringing in all of that content.
Sure.
Yeah, so
Appreciate.
these are some of the forward-looking sort of technologies, and I'm sure as we get into the meat of the discussion, we could talk about what else would be required going forward.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Sandeep. So let me just pull up a poll now on the role of technology. So fundamentally, you touched upon the topic of collaboration. So our travel ecosystem has closed technology platforms, unlike financial services or others, and we have very low levels of collaboration, right? So for the industry to survive, this needs to change, and we'd like to take the audience view on that. So does the audience agree with our views, or are they neutral, or do they strongly disagree? So can we have the poll go up, please? Thank you. Can we pull down the results, please? Okay. So there is a need to collaborate, Sandeep, to what you said. The audience also believes the same way. So between agree and strongly agree, you have an overwhelming majority. And I think it's the way to go, because you cannot have 100 apps on your phone when you navigate through airports. You need to be able to use agile platforms like Twitter. You need to be able to use agile handles to kind of navigate, get information. And airports, airlines, travel companies, card providers, payment expense and card providers should open up platforms which can be used by developers to kind of create an ecosystem which is robust. And that is what will lead to the ability of travelers to communicate seamlessly and use technology in its real form in travel. So thank you. Can you please pull the poll results down? Yeah, thanks. And I would like to bring in at this point in time Megha and ask her a few questions on innovations that are happening in the fintech space. What is her view on how travel is kind of evolving from a financial services expense and payment space, and what are the challenges that she sees in terms of secured and unsecured lines of credit? Because as you said, travel companies have gone down. They were funding travel companies using cards. So how does this whole thing change in terms of credit squeeze? Megha?
Thank you, Suraj. I think I would like to do the same thing by thanking everyone to be on this fantastic panel. Lots of insights, and the question comes in absolutely at the right time. We've heard from the industry, we've heard from the various players on the ecosystem, and I'll just try to bring everything together and just give a perspective, because I think whenever crisis hits humans, most of the time technology and innovation is usually the savior, and we always come out as a resilient force outside of this. And that's what I think the travel industry is also possibly going to see now. If I just kind of put what all the thoughts of the panelists are together, all the innovation in this space that you will see going forward will actually touch every point of the value chain. It will start from the fact when the decision making has to be done by a corporate on where how will the corporate create a safe value map for its employee. It will I think Ashish touched upon it, and then Sandeep touched upon it. that it will be extremely critical for innovation to come together to bring all the silos of the ecosystem and tell a corporate what are the safe zones to travel, what is happening on a particular airport, what cities are good or bad, what restaurant, which area, which district, and probably then integrate that with government information so that at a decision making point today the corporate feels very comfortable to kind of have a business travel agenda laid in front of its employees. I think that's the first part of it. So the problem statement of having, safety first needs to be sorted out, and innovation will play a role in that. And data sharing, as you rightly said, and as what the audience also mentioned, will have to all come along. And it will not be a choice, I feel. It will not be like a good to have. It will absolutely become pertinent now for any decision making for any sort of future business travel. The second piece I feel is that once a corporate has decided a travel policy, has created a safety map, they need to also know whether that was actually complied with. Did the employee did actually travel the way he was supposed to travel? Was the right flight taken? Was the right hotel taken? Were the right districts visited? So the whereabouts of the employees and constantly infusing confidence that we know you are safe and we'll keep you safe. And yes, you did indeed were safe. Even that aspect of compliance and monitoring will become absolutely essential. Now, all of this will only happen when data will seamlessly flow. Also, it will only happen where industry veterans and players who have the ability to transform this data into analytics and dashboards will kind of come up into play. And that actually segues into my final point of where we'll see not innovation, but like a major trend that you will see that this value chain will actually digitize. I'll be very surprised today if there'll be any corporate traveler who would not want to travel on a card. Everybody would want to actually use a card because they would want all of this information pre-decision making, while they are taking the decision, and once they have taken the decision. So I think that's how I feel the whole ecosystem will evolve. And yes, to your second question, do we feel that unsecured lending and cards and all of that will play a role? Of course, it will play a role. Risk decisions will be the way they are. But again, I will come to the point where companies who have been in this business for a long time, they understand travel, they have the right ability to identify the right corporates, will always be there to support this industry. But I think there is very, I would say that it's like a binary decision now, whether you want a digitized solution for travel or you do not want a digitized solution for travel. And I guess if we take a poll today, probably the 100% would go that yes, we want data, we want information, we want it to be digital, and hence we would want to do it with an absolutely trusted partner and probably card so that I have full visibility.
Sure, Megha. Thank you. So I have read your mind, and I have a poll coming up on the value chain innovation.
Lovely.
Right? Yeah. So there's a strong need for the value chain of service providers to innovate and reinvent, whether it's a TMC, whether it's a GDS, whether it's a payment and expense solution. What are the audience thoughts? Can we have that poll go up, please? Thank you.
I mean, this would actually, Suraj, this will look like we pre-prepared for this.
Yeah, we didn't. That's the truth of the matter. We didn't. But it's actually a meeting of minds, which is great because what you spoke is what we thought when we actually created this poll. So thanks, Megha. And I think we should have the results now. Oh, there you go. Strongly agree. An overwhelming percentage of 77% says strongly agree, 20% says agree, and neutral is 2 people and disagree is 1%. So my thoughts do go out to that 1%, but it has little or no credence currently. But let's go with the majority, which is say strongly agree and create that ecosystem. So let me quickly bring in Rajdev, because Rajdev has been working on trying to digitize this whole thing in terms of what you just spoke about. And Rajdev, do you want to go next? We have some challenges with the videos of some of these participants because the laptops don't permit external software, and hence we were not able to beam up Megha and we are not able to beam up Rajdev currently.
You're
Rajdev?
absolutely. Yes, if you can hear me,
Sure.
at least if you can
Yes.
hear me. Okay, great.
Yes.
So,
So
I'm
God is
not,
only heard, right? God is not visible, right?
so I am a truth researcher. Now, Suraj, you have to listen to this. Now,
Yeah,
what
go ahead.
if WebEx starts becoming a seamless place? How scary would that be for travel? So you must have these glitches so that travel is
Agree.
back
But I
sooner
am
or
not
better.
enjoying this as an organizer that we are not able to beam you, right? So I damn technology for it, right? It doesn't work when it has to work. And I really am worried why it's not working now. But yeah, go ahead, Rajdev. You're all ears.
Well, that gives me a hope and a strong, I came out with umbrella when God said that there may be rain. So that's fantastic. So yes, I think there are a few things to cover quickly. One, I think, is the work from home culture that's we are seeing right now, and the travel industry is 3 weeks back I was having a debate, and what hasn't happened over the last 1 decade, and I would use the word decade because 1 decade back all the components of our work from home was always available and we never took it by choice, and now we don't have a choice. And as we speak, the first thing that happened was, before I get into the customer side of the things, internally, even before I get into the digitalization of platforms and all of that, we have got a contact center of 90 people, and now we have a contact center of about 40,000 people in Wipro. Now, 90% of them are working from home, and of course, the security protocols and other stuff is still to be 100% accurate. But this has happened, and that has given a kind of a thumbs up to the entire management, not only for our organization, for any organization with large size, that one can do and save all that cost and yet be efficient. The second one is the willingness and ability to close large deals on a WebEx or offline seems to be the getting momentum, and that's not too good news for travel. But I want to believe that that's only for this portion, and people are once you start flying, they would always want to see you before making that call. Yeah, as far as a single platform is concerned. Now, single platform was not possible all this while because consolidation between the suppliers, it didn't start. What does it mean? I mean, even today, the bare fact, um, I may sound a little controversial, but bare fact that a 9 or a 10 leg itinerary can still be priced better by a human than
Yeah.
all the GPS strength put together is an indicator that the airlines have not collaborated, the RBDs are not nested, and blah blah blah. Everybody had their own agenda. Now I see that breaking, and I think this situation is just speeding up few process. The first one was the work from home, and then completely changing the work culture. Second one was, I am hoping that consolidation between the suppliers, and that's airlines, hotels, car, that will come through, because that's very important to come through, because otherwise we will go mad weaving the APIs, and that's just not happening. Second is, the third point is, give platform, single platform. We need to know who are the stakeholders, and this is something which I repeat, and at cost of sounding boring, it's extremely relevant. Now, a travel agency, there are 4 or 5 stakeholders at any given point of time, and if I ask them the question, what's your why, and that's why is different between all those 4. Now, travel agents, why is that I need to sort of give something to my clients so that I can make money, I can retain my clients. That's a different question. For a travel company, that's the question. For the traveler, let's make it easy for me, make it like a B2C experience. Don't put in too many thorns on the way and make my life miserable while raising a request. For a travel CHRO, it's about, what about cost, what about compliance. CFO would come back and saying that, where is my money, am I getting the best deal? Now, these are all 4 different stakeholders with very different questions and problems that we are needing to solve. So first and foremost, that needs to be done. So the attempt that we made, and I'm not in any way saying that others haven't, I think all of us are trying to do is trying to give in one microservice system that amalgamates and has got 2 sides, one side facing the corporate, one side facing the TMC, and those 2 are actually different products, but it's in the part of one microservice, so that the data is flown seamlessly and without a break, and then that gives us more and more impetus of doing the next thing what Megha spoke about, the predictive analytics, and the prescriptive analytics is always there. What about the predictive analytics? All the digitalization will go waste if there is no prediction, if there is no, how do you better that? So basically, I had to sort of bring in all this together. We attempted to do that, and we have to see all sides to this. And I hope that industry comes together to understand there is a dire requirement of that one fellow, that the traveler, that nobody thinks about a lot of time when these things are designed. But now I think he's the king. He is going to call the shots, and sooner or later the ecosystem is going to crumble around him.
Sure. So so I'm just trying to take a quick stock of time. We are now nearing roughly about an hour and 15 on the clock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a few pointers. We'll keep it brief, give insights to the audience. So Ashwin, I'll start with you, and I'm going to ask you some things around data privacy. How is contact tracing going to help? What apps are likely to play out in the global scenario? And what we are now bringing in is all the audience questions. We have now clubbed it into, weaving it into the fabric of what we are talking about. And we'll start with this.
Sure. So thanks, Suraj. Pretty insightful this far. You've touched on a very important point, which is data. And all of us say it's going to be the new oil that's going to drive the way business is done. And what COVID's done is what probably demoted to digital payment, right? And I think Mega will probably agree with me on that. GDPR globally has already probably taken its importance. India, it's a bill, it's going to get passed, but looking at various poll results.
If the opposition allows.
Okay, I'm not commenting on that. Don't make me. Don't get
yeah, we don't want to get political. I just kind of thought, yeah, fair.
Okay, but I think it's about how organizations are going to start using data and give confidence back to that passenger, be it you and me, on what are they going to be doing with that data. Now, an interesting thought that we had on another session a couple of days back was to say, why can't the data be residing back in the app, in the device of the passenger itself? Why should the airport or the travel agency own that, or the travel company own that data? So before I decide to travel, I push the data to whoever wants it, and once I've finished my travel, the data gets cleaned back again. So in the meanwhile, what analytics you want to run, you can run it as an individual. But something which Salil mentioned, and I want to bring that up, and I'm just making my notes. He said ancillary revenue is going to probably just disappear for airlines. I beg to differ, Salil. In fact, I think probably it's a great opportunity using data on how you're going to actually, enhance that part of it, because humans are an extension of their habit. We have to eat. Our senses are still going to be there. Models such as the Trinity or the Trinity Plus model that has worked well around the world probably just start quadruplating now, and data is going to make that whole thing. But that said, Suraj, we've had this conversation when we spoke last time, is to say, how am I going to instill confidence back in that customer and that passenger who's the center of the conversation we're having today, in saying, how am I going to use this data to prove to you that where you're going to be traveling is actually a safe place? So that I think becomes the holy grail for all of us on this webinar here, to put our heads together to say, how are we going to make that happen? The end objective you'll be trying to achieve is that make travel as seamless, as simple as possible for the customer. Because otherwise you're already stressed life. Imagine your phone with 50 apps and 20 people beaming information
to you.
Ashwin,
I have a question, right? I have a question just to kind of interject you there. So you think an app is the right way forward, and the Arogya Setu app which the government has brought out? What's your thought on that?
So good point. Something that we've been, breaking our head with a lot of the large OEMs who are the technology giants, to say, how do we make Arogya Setu the center of our travel life going forward? And China's probably done that pretty well with whatever app they have, where they've ticked you off as green. With over 10 crore downloads already, can we as a country integrate Arogya Setu into our travel life? What do I mean by that is linking Aadhaar, linking your travel itinerary, okay, pushing that information to the airport and the airline, okay, integrating that with whatever stopgap arrangements we're going to make. For example, thermal scanning. When you enter the airport, your driver who's picked you up is already screened by using the Arogya Setu app. You come in, depending on your risk profile, using AI ML, you're able to then identify whether that particular passenger was high risk even before he touches the curb. Depending on what the system throws back to you, you then push him to a rapid test or you do a PCR test, ask him to wait on the curb. Once he's green, he's cleared to go, he enters. So CISF does not need to touch your phone or your ticket. It's a barcode or a QR code that's generated. Scan it, you enter. And then from there on, your journey remains the way it is or enhanced using whatever digital means that you want to use.
Sure.
So the point I'm making over here, Suraj, and it's for the wider audience, especially my technology folks over here, is that how do we keep things as simple as it was and keep it to the era that was pre-COVID? Meaning
Understood.
an airport, an airline does not change its concept of operations. You can bring all the elements of hygiene and all of that stuff, but then it still remains the same.
The fundamental nature remains the same, you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. So on this, I would like to run a poll on data privacy and regulatory frameworks, right? So data privacy, as you said, has been the holy grail. People have not been willing to let go of it. But let's run a poll and see what the audience believes on that. Can we have the poll go up, please? So data privacy, GDPR likely to witness an overhaul due to border controls and government regulations. Do you agree? Can we have the results, please? So that's interesting. And again, an overwhelming 77% is saying yes, that there is going to be an overhaul. You will have to share more information because your health, which was personal until now, has now become impersonal because you have the ability to impact someone else, right? So we can pull the polls down. And I'd like to bring in at this point a quick view from Ashish and Sandeep to say that the existing feeds that we have, how easy is it to integrate or pull through this feed if in case the government wants to kind of start doing a health check as mandatory for a traveler, like they're getting the phone numbers, email IDs. If you have to push this information through, especially because you push passport information through to border control on PNRs, right? So how do you see this shaping up?
So if I could go first, actually, the way Sabre handles a solution like this is to bring in a red app. So any app which we have to go through a certification to make sure that from a construct perspective, data privacy, etc., GDPR, etc., that the app is working all right, and then we can take a data flow from that app and build it into the data flow, into the booking flow of any corporate TMC or travel agency, and integrate that into the PNR if required in terms of information on the auxiliary fields. So that should not be a problem. Actually, I would like to touch upon going forward a little further thinking on this, because while I really appreciate that this is a India-centric business discussion, but when you start talking globally, as an example, I mean, I'm right now thinking about traveling to Australia, and the Arogya Setu, while it'll get me into the airport here and get me out of the country, Australia has their own app which they are talking about, right? So I think going forward, the collaboration has to go far beyond just making sure that the entities work together. And one of the things that Sabre has done at the beginning of this year is tied up a 10-year partnership with Google to start on a cloud-based journey, but also to look at how do we address retailing, distribution, and fulfillment by using some of the disruptive analytics that Google does at their point of sale. Now, to
Sure.
my mind, that is the sort of thinking that you've got to get into this, because it is not going to be, particularly when it comes to international travel, it's not going to be, you may transit through Abu Dhabi, you may transit, you may end up in a different location. You have to make sure that this piece seamlessly flows across borders as well, right? So I think while the simple answer is that yes, it's very easy to integrate an app into your work stream, and a number of TMCs in India have done that for some of the unique apps that they are using and they have created. And so it should not be a problem from an Arogya Setu standpoint as long as it meets with the GDPR
Sure.
compliance and all of the data compliance requirements. But I think we've got to start thinking a lot bigger than this.
Suraj, I
Ashish?
just want to just
Yeah.
interject here for a second, Suraj. See, if you look at India predominantly, right, we're largely a domestic market. Our international segment is very, very small at the moment, right, till the time probably the country doesn't open up and say open skies. And I like the point which Sandeep made. It's actually integrating. So again, going back to the fundamental that I'm saying, COVID is just a blip in our life. Okay, it's there for probably a year and a half or two. We might probably not have a vaccine for a while, but eventually the world will get used to traveling this way. For us as folks sitting leading this at the end of that arrow, it's for us to figure out on how this whole thing connects. So I think step one for us would be is to say, get the policy thinkers to agree to this part. DigiYatra is already there. It's in the making. How do you now integrate all of this together? So, something that I'll bring up, and Salil will support me on that. As an airline, okay, they really struggle when an OTA books the ticket because they don't have information.
Sure.
So today, use the policy framework, use COVID as an opportunity to change that policy framework to push towards digital. If you ask an airport today, they really struggle in understanding who my customer is. So how are they going to push for their ancillary revenue or their non-aero revenue? It's only when I get to know what that persona is going to do, that's when things are going to change. So
No, but
I think
Ashwin, let me just kind of stop you there, because there is a clear distinction between my data being used for commercial activity and being used for medical related activities, right? So as a corporate buyer, I'm sure that Verghese and Pooja will agree with me that they will not agree, a corporate or an individual will not agree to using this data for commercial activities, right? So I think that treats a larger discussion which will be outside our scope currently as I see it.
fair
So
enough,
we'll just
but
park it. We'll just park it for the moment. Yeah, I
I
just want
beg
to
to
take
differ.
Ashish in at this point, understand what his thoughts are on what Sandeep said, and then I want to just go to Ramesh because I want to understand the impact of jobs and how the young talent that's coming into the industry looks at this whole thing, right? And maybe Megha's views on that. So just allow me some time, Ashwin. Maybe if we have time later, we'll revisit. We are already running short, so I don't want us to deviate from that particular aspect currently.
Yeah,
Ashish?
thanks, Sunil. So my views on this would be that I'm open to see what shape and form of new technology takes place, but I'm wary for jumping too quickly into these new innovative ideas. I would want. So it's a long game. It's a marathon. We don't need to change processes tomorrow. We need to agile, keep focusing on user, keep looking at these innovations. Of course, needless to mention, innovation will speed it up, but there are multiple facets to think about. And that's what my position would be. Very open to explore, but not very open to disrupt. I would just first want this a flight to take off. I'm going to take baby steps mentally, month by month, probably day by day, for the next 6 months, not rushing into this. I don't have all the answers. Neither after 6 months I will have all the answers. But
Sure, Ashish.
industry shape up. So happy to look at if there is an opportunity to have a digital journey of a user at the airport, but I would leave that to the airport managers or the airport authority to sort of decide. And then of course see the impact of that in from the data point from my corporates, whether they're really willing to share all that information with a third party executors or not. So very cautious approach right now.
Sure.
And
Thanks.
sorry guys, but I need to rush into another meeting. Of course, another digital meeting. But
Sure.
so I'll be dropping
Appreciate
out
you
now.
joining this panel. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate you joining this panel. We're just going to continue for a few more minutes. Do you have any parting thoughts to give before you leave in terms of summarizing what you just said so that we could just continue after that?
Sure. Last parting thought, don't try and predict the future. Just do what is required for today and tomorrow. Survive.
Sure.
Week by week, month by month, focus on customer. No long shots right now.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Ashish. So I just want to bring Ramesh in at this point and ask you, Ramesh, that there is a complete supply pool coming out of colleges looking for jobs in travel. they are now at the wrong end of it. They graduate at possibly the wrong time, like a recession hitting you, right? It's akin to that. So what is your advice to that from a hospitality and travel perspective? And what is your advice to the rest of the talent who's on this call, who faces a lot of uncertainties and stuff like that?
Thanks, Suraj. Well, I would say, and many of my colleagues on the phone here who've been in the industry for a while will know this, that if there's one industry that's very resilient and it's been proven over time, it is the travel industry. We might see its ups and downs over different cycles, but eventually the industry is resilient. And for someone who's passionate about the industry, I would say don't give up. As we look at it, we are still seeing hotel deals signed. We're still opening hotels, even though in this current environment, there's a freeze on demand. But we are still planning towards opening hotels for the second half of the year. So if that's any indication, I would say there's still some positivity here. But of course, there's been impact to existing businesses, like every other business, and we're doing our best to minimize that impact. So we're working very closely with our owners and franchisees across the world, and we put some measures in play. But I believe those measures are temporary, and hopefully things do recover soon, so we can get back to that growth trajectory and then welcome new talent into the industry, because we need that talent, and especially this industry does need an infusion of new energetic talent to keep us going. So that would be my take for the industry.
Thanks, Ramesh. So Megha, do you want to come in and share your thoughts on it? Because from you expand the scope with financial services, and do you want to kind of give in your thoughts?
Yeah, sure, Suraj. So I kind of completely agree with Ramesh that the industry is resilient, but I just want to give you a slightly broader perspective. COVID has not just hit travel and tourism. COVID has hit every part of the way we do business, the way we live, both personally, mentally, professionally. I think every organization, every industry, and every sector is evolving to be more optimized, to be more efficient. I think travel, tourism, business travel, we were also always, if you kind of just step back and see, every organization would have plans to optimize travel. It was not always off the cards. It's just got a little accelerated. Plus, it'll have some peripherals attached to it, which, as I mentioned in the past, innovations like data exchanges and stuff like that will bolster the whole piece. At the end of the day, when I'm sitting in the lockdown for whatever 60, 70 days, the only thing I'm thinking is that June used to be the month when I used to travel 15 days for work and 15 days for vacation. And as long as the safety net goes back, I don't think we can sit at home. That's my personal, absolutely my personal feeling. We would love to go out. We would love to meet people, and we would love to explore, of course, in a safe way. So, so I would slightly differ from Ashish in that sense, that there should be a sense of urgency to bring that safety net in. While you may not want to jump into a new app, but even now, as we speak, for example, at Amex, we have launched a dashboard which we very interestingly and aptly called We Care, and we kind of bring all the data that I could have about an employee traveling as a dashboard out to the corporate, and the millennials have loved it. They've said, yes, that's what I want to know. This is my travel history. This is the map where I can go. Okay, I will go. So that's what I think it's we need to be all positive about it. I think we'll all come out.
Excellent. So I'll quickly go across to Verghese and Pooja on the millennial part. I'll take their views, and then we'll slip into a 1-minute summary from all of you, and then see how we can wind down the webinar today. So Verghese and Pooja, the millennials are not necessarily known for following compliance. They don't like rules. They love independence. They love kind of freedom. So how do you see this fitting into the programs now that we're talking about some of these things going open?
Pooja, you want to take on?
Sure. Thank you, CV. So, when we constantly develop policies, for efficient travel. We put a lot of trust into our people, and so that they're able to drive, that the decisions that they take are in the interest of the company. So we try to look at a lot more things like empower the employee to help them to do things that they need to do. So in my opinion, the kind of policy that we currently run, um, it caters to all kinds of travelers. And the idea is how you empower them to take those decisions while still be within the certain guideline, certain framework.
Okay, sure. So you think what compliance levels will go up in the short to medium term? Yes or no?
Yes,
Yes, because employees will want to listen into what organizations say, and we saw that on the polls.
absolutely.
So I don't think you're talking anything different. Okay.
Yeah.
Salil, do you have any thoughts on the contracting cycle? Airlines are behind the contracting cycle currently. March is when you used to finalize contracts. You don't know what networks are there now, what capacity is going to be mounted. Job cuts are rampant in the airline industry. We have a challenge on hand. So, any thoughts?
Yeah, so on contracting, there's obviously two kinds of contracting, right? One with the agent, one with the corporate. So with regards to the agents, unfortunately the system works in such a way that you need a baseline to be able to establish a contract, and all baselines that we knew of have been wiped out. So I think most of the industry, and Etihad has taken first mover position on this, it is pretty much going to move out to upfront payments. That might mean reduced yields for travel agents, but it brings in some kind of a guarantee in terms of numbers that they can book in the beginning of the contracting term. So that's for the agents. For the corporates, Varghese mentioned a very interesting point, and I agree that it will move to that, because again there is no baseline. You cannot agree on volumes. It will become a market share game. But that being the case, there is a technological challenge that I want to highlight with regards to the corporate contracting based on market share, that a lot of corporates today are averse to tools like Prism and other aggregating tools because of data privacy concerns, and that obviously blends into the other data privacy discussion that we were having. So that adoption will need to significantly go up if we're going to do corporate deals based on market shares, because if you cannot aggregate all airline data and arrive at an accurate market share number which is mutually agreeable between the corporate and the airline, then you don't have basis to start talking about a contract. So
Sure.
those are my views. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So I just want to ask Sandeep a question, and then I want to just give you one minute to summarize so that we could bring this to a final conclusion, as I said. Sandeep, my question to you is that do you see NDC as a concept gaining ground considering airlines are under stress currently? Right. So the investments into technology from an airline standpoint, you see that slowing down because all airlines were not NDC compliant. Distribution remains a challenge. All travel companies are not savvy. They're not going to be able to adopt to NDC overnight. There is an integrator cost associated to it, though NDC and airlines have not really been able to segregate advantages of NDC fares onto end platforms. So, what is your view?
That's a really loaded question, but I'll attempt to do it while there's an airline person on the panel.
Sure.
I
Look,
think
you just have to figure
and
out.
I'll go back.
You just have to figure out, Sandeep. Sorry, you just have to figure out if he's ready to pay you the big bucks, right? It's because of you that he's gone back and done what he's done, right? Ideally, they formed the GDS, and it's only kind of ironical that they went back and wanted to recreate what they formed, right?
Now you're
Yeah,
making
go
me
ahead.
say things. So I'll go back to my aviation days. I mean, I worked with Qantas for a year and a half or 2 years, and at that time, I was actively involved with the commercial side of the business, and I still feel that going forward, the whole concept of personalized offer is a very strong motivator for the airlines to think that eventually they will have a solution which is going in that direction. Having said that, currently, and to your point, currently airlines are going through a very difficult time, and as soon as COVID gets over, and I think Ashwin was making a point that COVID is going to be a norm for probably about 18-24 months, beyond that, hopefully with a vaccine or cure coming out, the broader agenda of retailing and distribution will still come back to the table. But in the short term, I think focus would be to fill seats, make sure that the travel economy takes off. And in that taking off, if you don't mind, I'll digress a little bit on this question, on this answer, to try and cover a couple of comments that Megha and Ramesh made around the millennials. Because I certainly believe that this industry, I started my career in banking, and I very rapidly moved into travel because it's an emotional industry, but it's also an industry which I think is now reaching its sort of golden years ahead because of the rapid globalization of businesses. And to my mind, therefore, um, um, travel will rebound, and
Sure.
particularly in the corporate sector, it will rebound eventually. And as the millennials come into this industry, the tools and the solutions that you have to create for them have to be very different. In fact, one of the things that I'd mentioned last time when we were having a chat, if you recall, Suraj, was that Sabre's made the new version of Sabre, which is called Sabre at 360, which, by the way, we've launched in South Asia about 6 months back, fully graphical. It's easy, point and click. A lot of the training associated with it is very intuitive and web-based. So you don't have to come into a classroom. You can do it at your own time. You can do it on a iPad or a phone or whatever. You don't have to be in a classroom environment to go through all of that. So to my mind, I think that is going to be also quite important as the industry rebounds.
Sure. Thanks, Sandeep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow you a minute each to summarize, as we kind of are overshooting on time. So Ashwin, we can start with you. You want to just summarize the way forward, the new norm with COVID in place?
Sure, thanks, Suraj. So, for me, I'm an eternal optimist. I believe that, humans are humans. We're going to touch and hug each other, and there will be a life after COVID. So, Count Dracula, you can go fly a kite. That's it. Okay.
Thank you. That's really optimistic. Thanks, Ashwin. So can I
India,
go next?
okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have
go
a
ahead.
minute, dude.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, go
give
ahead,
me
go
a
ahead, go
minute.
ahead. Go ahead, please.
So,
I thought
India,
you wanted to keep it short and sweet. Yeah, go ahead. You have the
no,
minute.
a couple of points I need to make. So,
Yeah, yeah, please.
India will be the bright spot, okay? And
Yeah,
travel will come back, and India will be the center where the world is going to come. And I believe that, and I believe it from
sure,
my heart. So it's an
sure,
opportunity for all of us. So a couple of points that as takeaways from this conversation, right? First, the policymakers, which is Mocha here, I think needs to create an empowered committee. And that committee is not just limited to airlines and airports, but it needs to bring the wider ecosystem, the hoteliers, the fintech guys who are associated with them. What will that do is it will open up new revenue streams. Okay. And data is going to be that part which will help you open up new revenue streams. You could also use your data to figure out how to keep your costs as low as possible. Okay. You'll break your silos and start building that overall ecosystem that's going to make travel as seamless as possible. Technologies like blockchain will come into play, and that's the real use of blockchain in this industry. That said, I'll close by saying, it's been difficult times for a lot of youngsters, especially who are just coming into this industry. Many of us on this panel who are as audience over here are probably in positions to help them out. So if there is an opportunity to help somebody out, please extend that hand. I think it will go a long way in building this industry up. Thanks, Suraj.
sure. Thanks, Ashwin. Really appreciate that. So do you want to go next, Megha?
So, just as I'll keep it very short and sweet, Suraj. I do believe that every time a shock comes into any part of our lives, we always will find better ways of doing business. So I also believe as we come out of COVID, the ecosystem would be more integrated. We would have more visibility of what and how we need to do things. We'll be more efficient and we'll be more digital, and we'll be more aware, as we walk out of it, so that when hopefully not, and fingers crossed, there is no repeat of COVID. But if at all it is, we would have kind of created systems good enough to kind of sustain any further shocks as well. So I'm very
Sure.
positive. Ashwin said that travel is going to be the center. We didn't touch something in this webinar was that the usual prediction that domestic
When
travel
will
will
travel
probably,
bounce?
yeah,
Yeah.
the domestic
Yeah, I
travel will
thought it was abused enough by enough people in the ecosystem, so
yeah.
I didn't want to abuse it further.
But it's important to say that we'll probably in the next couple of days start seeing
Sure.
opening on that.
Hopefully, domestic travel commence. Yeah, yeah. I think that's the way forward. Thanks, Megha. That's really optimistic and the way forward. Yeah. Can I ask Pooja to go next? Pooja, you want to talk about what you feel?
Sure, Suraj, thank you. Since everyone's, really giving positive thoughts, my only takeaway from, or advice here would be that digitization is really the key. And in this downtime, we really have an opportunity to fine tune our strategies or plan for new ones, right? So the question really is that what is it that I can do now to improve the program as we come out on the other side of COVID?
Sure. Thanks, Pooja. Ramesh,
Thank
can I
you.
ask you to go next, please?
Sure, Suraj. Well, firstly, great discussion. I think my sense to leave everyone with all of this is that I share the positivity. It's going to be incremental in nature, even though it's going to be in small steps, but it's a step towards the right direction. And as we plan towards this, everyone in the ecosystem to support each other with
Sure.
the end user in mind, which is the customer, right? And if you keep the traveler or the customer in the center, I think as an industry we can come up with some great solutions that will enable travel, and that enabling of travel will allow the economy to return back in the bigger scheme of things. And I think that's the focus that's required. And through that, some logical thinking. I think it's going to take people to focus less on the opportunity, but more focus on what is the right thing to do. And I think a lot of the folks on the panel have said that we as an industry need to focus on the right thing to do. And if that's our true north, I think we'll recover a lot more sooner than expected. So thanks
Sure,
again for
Ramesh.
opening it.
Thank you. Rajdev, do you want to go next? Thanks, Ramesh, for your views. Rajdev?
Yes, hi. So, I'll keep it simple. I was reading a few days back that all the wise men gathered in somewhere around in 1950s, including Einstein, and they predicted 2020. In fact, they predicted 2000. I mean, that's like, and whatever they predicted, nothing came true. And that's because, they did not even consider the birth of the internet, and something completely changed. All the astrologers couldn't predict. There are too many parameters. A product is have too many numbers, and anything multiplied by zero gets zero, or if it gets enhanced. There are so many parameters that I don't think there is any reason for the travel industry to feel that there is no way out. And this is not the only crisis we have come into. We have survived all crises. And as all the panelists said, I am completely in the tune. This is an opportunity. And all of us, mark my words, when we come back 5 years from now, we'll probably look back and probably say that 2020 has made us more resilient and stronger. And that's completely my belief. And that's how I want to end it.
Thanks, Rajdev. Those are really nice views. So, Salil, can I request you to go next?
Yeah,
Salil?
Suraj, thanks. Yeah, Suraj, thanks. I think from an aviation standpoint, it's going to be a marathon. It will require massive transformation from all the airlines, and ultimately it will become the survival of the fittest because of the length of the fight that we're looking at.
Sure.
And the survival of the fittest will depend on two main things, right? One is the airline's ability to recapitalize and at the same time become leaner. The history shows that most airline promoters have shown themselves to be either unable or unwilling to recapitalize their business because purely from a financial standpoint, it is seen as throwing good money after bad money. As a result of that, the capacity is expected to reduce in the latter half of the year. That is a fact because some players will go out of business. We've already seen 6 or 7 major airlines go out of business in the last few weeks. And the second thing that will make them, win the survival of the fittest battle is the adoption of technology tools and how they increase the visibility of that adoption to the customer. That will be key. You can keep doing a lot of stuff yourself, but not show it to the customer. That won't help. So I think it's
Sure.
the survival of the fittest, and these are the two main things that will make the
Drive.
airlines.
Yeah, sure. Sandeep, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. In mid-March, I was chatting with one of my really large customers, the CEO of one of the large travel businesses, and he was being very upfront. I mean, he said, my biggest challenge when I'm talking to my team is knowing what to do when you don't know what to do. I mean, it was a stark reminder that, I mean, a lot of us are going through a very, very difficult time. And I think at a time like that, and he also put it up very, very appropriately when I did ask him, so how are you handling it? He said, I'm focusing on the things that I can control, and that's what
Sure.
we should all be doing. And I'll just recap from all of the discussions that we've talked about. I think we've got to focus on, as a TMC, focus on automation to drive down costs. We've got to focus on cross-selling and getting new revenue streams in through not just selling air content, but maybe hotel, car, and a whole host of other things like virtual payments and so on and so forth. You've got to focus on driving fare optimization using the right technology, so that you're shopping and giving the best sort of an outcome for your customer. And finally, you got to start ensuring that the whole piece around retailing is done in a very, very smart way,
Efficient manner.
because the way the way shopping will evolve, it is going to change a lot. And that's where, making sure that you have those disruptive analytics around the data that you're picking up is going to be key.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I
Thanks,
see a
Sandeep.
positive future, but I think we've got to prepare for it.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you.
Verghese, last thoughts?
Thank you, Suraj. I think great discussion. I think there's a lot of learning that we have from this. What I personally feel is there's a lot that you can learn during this time of crisis. This change behavior will not only be useful for our immediate response, but also to make us and our organization more resilient in the future. I also see we always talk about survival of the fittest, but I think what's going to be their change is live and let others live. I think I'll
Sure.
hand it over back to you. Thank you.
Sure. So coming from a
There's
corporate,
just
those are great words.
one thing that I wanted to ask Ramesh. So so we talked a lot about standardization and organization support across the airline industry, creating SOPs and standardization and coming out with the future processes and systems. But I didn't hear a lot about a global industry forum defining things in the hotel industry. Is there something that you can talk about in that area, Ramesh?
Sure, Argis. You're right in terms of the hospitality industry getting together to put something together overall. I think the companies on their own have taken a decision to put things together. Whether it's a council, I can talk to Marriott at least at this stage. We have a global council that has been put together across regions to focus on protocols, SOPs, guest experience from check-in to check-out, meeting rooms. All those SOPs have been put in place. But to your point, has the industry got together? Not yet. And maybe once we figure this out, that's the next step, right? As an industry, what do we do?
I'll tell you the reason why I asked you this, because some years back when we had the GST change, I mean the GST being introduced in the market, airline adopted it well. They got the systems in place, they got the process in place, but somehow there was no one process, one system in the hotel industry or the hospitality industry, and which led to a lot of issues with every organization that we were working with, right? So,
Sure.
I mean, that's what led to this question. Yeah, thank you for your response.
Sure. Thanks, Verghese. Thanks, Ramesh, for clarifying. So I'd like to summarize and thank you all the panel members. It's been great having you on this evening. And I really appreciate from the bottom of my heart that you've been able to spare this time, educate our audience about how the situation is unfolding, right? We don't have all the answers, as we said. We have a lot more questions than answers. I wish to thank the team at TravelSpends, the backend team that put together the research, the team of Kanan and Manisha who are actually controlling these consoles. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for helping us contribute back to the industry. My other co-founder Girish and the rest of the team at TravelSpends. I really want to thank them because we've been really kind of working hard to put this event together. Finally, a quick summary and a parting message from me as a moderator. So I'd like to summarize that communication is the key. We whether it is airlines, hotels, the ecosystem talking to each other, information needs are going to change. Profiles need to be shared. In what extent, in what capacity, that will come out as a result of various deliberations, like what Ashwin said. Information will is critical, but it is not going to be more critical than health and safety. Okay, touch and feel will never go away from our business. We seem to all agree on that. It will, in fact, digitization will gain momentum, but touch and feel will remain in our industry. Adaptation and learnings will be more important than ever because we are facing with a question of survival, and the basic instincts have to come through. So adaptation is going to be the key, and what you learn, as Megha said, as what Sandeep said, is going to be critical. The need to innovate is also clearly standing out. We need to innovate and collaborate as an industry, open up platforms and talk to each other, allow our systems to talk to each other, and not kind of stay in a world which is a silo. And finally, the adoption of technology, like what Rajdev said, is going to become the key, because you may want to do all of this, you have good intent, but unless you take the first step to adopt and bring things on board, you're not going to be able to progress and play this game. Finally, people and resources will continue to remain important. Organizations are going through downsizing, they're going through turbulent times, but you require to up the game by getting new skill sets, by changing the approaches, by getting new uh, platforms working in your organizations. And for the young scholars who have joined us today, I would say stay invested, because this industry has a bright future, as Ashwin said, as all the other panelists said. Do not let your faith shake at all. You are on the right track. You should influence more people joining travel and tourism, because the kind of impact it has on the global economy is huge, right? I would leave the audience and panelists with a thought, right? Every day we see the sun setting, right? It only sets for a new day to emerge, right? Similarly, a flower withers only for a bud to bloom, right? So this is a passing time. This time will pass too, and tomorrow morning will be a absolutely fresh day, and we will soon see a future which is brilliant. So with that, I want to end the webinar for today. I'd like to thank all the panelists, and I'd request the organizers to pull the curtain down on this webinar. Thank you and have a great evening. God
Thank
bless.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a
I
lot.
will keep the fares low, all sins forgiven.
Yeah, I'm sure. In God we trust. So thank you. Let's end the webinar, please.